Okay, I'm here with Joe Corre outside the Rolls building, the Royal Courts of Justice. Joe, we're just out from Justice Morgan's ruling on the INEOS injunction. What's your immediate reaction?
My immediate reaction is, you know, we've won some important points, and yet there is a lot more to do. So I think people have to remember that INEOS initially took this injunction out in secret, a secret hearing at the end of July. They knew everyone was on holiday and it was a quiet time, and they thought they were going to come back at the beginning of September and have this thing stamped into permanent law, 7 years law. That didn't happen then. Then we had the 3-day hearing and the interim injunction has continued. The interim injunction has continued today. From when they got the injunction in the first place, you have to remember that INEOS boasted, and were boasting, that it was the widest injunction of its kind ever. Right? What we've managed to cut off today is all of the harassment stuff, because it's clear that if somebody's coming to your town or village and going to destroy your environment and your way of life, telling those people that you don't like what they're doing is not harassment. You know, and I think that, so, you know, previously the injunction included posting anything, communicating with anyone on social media in their supply chain, saying anything they didn't like, talking to their staff in a way they didn't like, all of that sort of stuff, helping people to protest, driving them there, giving them a cup of tea, encouraging them. All of that has been thrown out. The parts and the difficult parts that remain are the infringements on our right to protest, slow walking, locking on,
lorry surfing,
those types of things, which are effective, very effective tools in slowing down this monstrous killer industry. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag, and I think that's what we were expecting. And we now have 2 weeks to be able to really consider in detail what the judgment says, and to then come back and put our case for an appeal, or a possible appeal. And obviously we've got 2 legal teams, myself and Joe Boyd's team, and it might be that tactically we decide to divide and conquer, or how we decide to kind of put that together. But there's some very fundamental human rights points that we need to resist very strongly. So when we come back in 2 weeks' time, I'm not even sure if we come back physically or it's done on paper, but when we come back, the judge can either allow us the right to appeal or refuse us right to appeal. If he allows us, that gives us a quicker route into the appeal court. If he refuses us, then we have to ask the appeal court to allow us to appeal the judgment, and that takes a little bit longer. But it's important that we appeal this judgment before it goes to full trial, because if we allow this judgment to go to full trial, we can only contest it on the basis of this judgment, not the appeals issues that we would like to bring to the appeal.
Now, back in September, I mean, Justice Morgan actually acknowledged that the human rights elements were outside his field of experience, and you know, the sign behind you says the business and property courts of England and Wales, so they're not normally dealing with any human rights issues. So he effectively just ignored that, really, didn't he, in his ruling today?
Well, the biggest problem here, Ian, really, if we really think about it, is the whole idea of secret courts in themselves. That's the big problem. It was something that Theresa May brought in when she was in the Home Office, and this is precisely a clear example of what could happen, what people were saying was wrong with that decision at the time, all dressed up about the terrorist threat and everything else. You know, if you think about it, you know, the people of Lancashire democratically voted to kick fracking in. They didn't want it there. It was forced on them by a government minister who overruled them, Sajid Javid or Greg Clark or one of those arseholes, you know, that came and said, you know, you're going to have it anyway. So what have those people got left to do if they don't have a right to protest, if posting something on social media gives them a 2-year prison term? I mean, this is what's going on, right? And this is why people need to stand up, they need to talk to their MPs. The Labour Party need to get involved and stop talking and start acting, actually. as well as all the other politicians. We can't have this. Corporations that are based in offshore tax havens and with these super structures that make them unaccountable to anybody, coming in here into this country and buying the bloody law. It's got to stop. You know, so, and as I've said before, I'm proud in some ways to be able to stand up and defend this, but I'm also ashamed because it shouldn't be like that in this country. It shouldn't take somebody like me or Joe at the last minute to try and challenge this secret court and now have to take it to appeal to protect our human rights. It shouldn't be like that. And it's got to stop. Otherwise, we'll have nothing left in this country. We've got Brexit coming, where a lot of the regulations are going to get thrown away. And we need very serious, strong regulations in this country to protect people and protect their human rights from these monstrous companies that are trying to kill us.
Absolutely. Well, the good news is that from today's ruling, that there's no incentive for the other companies like Third Energy, which is Barclays Bank,
yes,
iGas, Quadrilla, Egdon, all these other companies. There's no incentive at the moment for them to initiate their own proceedings, because first of all, they haven't got the money, unlike INEOS, and basically they're potentially
now
going to
become much more complicated.
Exactly, they would undermine what's going on here.
Walk in the park. As I said, it's a win for us because they wanted this thing stamped into law on the 12th of September. Right? We're now at the end of November, and they've still got an interim injunction with an appeal court process and a full trial process, where at each stage we're hoping to just keep cutting them back, and that's what we're trying to do.
Also, the good news, Joe, is that INEOS haven't actually got a live frack site yet.
No,
they're still at the very early stage. They're planning,
Sure.
And obviously, so they've still got the time. And so this,
they've tried to terrify everybody,
Exactly.
to get out of their way in advance, and it hasn't worked. And so we can all kind of be thankful for that, you know.
But you made the point, and it is up to people in their communities to do more than just whinge or moan or work online. They've actually got to get involved.
March him down to flipping Parliament and get him to stand up and do something about it, because there'll be nothing left if we don't.
I think it pretty much sums it up, Joe. So thanks very much for all you're doing anyway.
Cheers,
and good luck with the next round.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Okay.
So, you've heard from Joe Boyd earlier this morning, and now Joe Corre, and it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I've got this ruling here to work through, as have the legal teams. It's not done and dusted, it's not cut and dried, but unfortunately what it does demonstrate is that the courts, the Admiralty courts, the commercial courts, if they had their way and were unopposed, then they would simply introduce a raft of rulings that would deny any dissent from any part of the community. So all to play for, and like I said, it doesn't in any way, shape or form impact on the other companies like Barclays Bank, i.e. Third Energy at Kirby Misperton, and now of course we've got to wait and see what Greg Clark decides to do. Will he hold fire? Will he acknowledge the raft of documentation that's been submitted to him, causing him to delay the sanction of the Third Energy frack for over 3 weeks now? So, Joe, quick word. Joe's just finished his interview with Channel 4. So, Joe, there's a bit more of a smile than you had when you went in there. Happy with the outcome today?
No, I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed, to be fair. Because what we came here to challenge initially is persons unknown. That's what we came to challenge. We came to challenge that any corporation can come to this court and say that we want an injunction because X, Y, and Z. And that's still there. And that's it. And he's made his judgment. It's unprecedented. It's never happened in this country before. What's happened?
But he has left the avenue open for that to be challenged. Well, to be challenged over the next few weeks.
Yeah, we've got 14 days to put an appeal in, and that's just like I just said, Channel 4. Then we will put an appeal.
But he did pull out all the harassment issues. Yeah. So INEOS were trying to shut down, as Joe Corre's just explained. He was trying to shut down all dissent, literally, So anybody who even dared make a post on social media about what INEOS were doing
Indeed.
ran the risk of being in breach of the injunction,
Indeed.
and that is thrown out.
Yeah, no, that's the good thing that's come from it, for sure. You know, we started from INEOS having their foot on our heads, and that's when I say our heads, I'm talking about the population of this country. And we came and we took a little bit back initially. And we've taken a little bit back now if you look at it in that sense. People are now free to speak online, and I know that's had a chilling effect. And it's had an extremely chilling effect, because people have been fearful of even speaking out on social media and saying stuff. I've seen it recently. I've seen the drop in people's activities. Obviously, personally not myself, because as far as I'm concerned, you know, I didn't agree with the harassment from the start. Why? Harassing what? I've got to be able to campaign, and so has everyone else got to be able to campaign. How can we change things if we can't even campaign? We can't even campaign to political parties or anything, because it brings in all this issues. So yeah, that was always a technical point. So yeah, we've got that back, so that's good, so people can get on with their campaign and stuff like that. But like I said, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's
Well, the other good news for me though is that he's not made it so definitive that it will motivate the likes of Third Energy, iGas, Europa, Egdon, Quadrilla. They won't be champing at the bit now to get their own injunctions in place. Well, certainly not just yet. So apparently another camera picked me up, probably with a big voice.
okay.
And a directional microphone. But anyway, so at least the other companies won't be looking to initiate their own proceedings just yet.
Yeah, just yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think what will happen is they'll probably all be sitting watching on this. INEOS, the big boys, aren't they? Let's get it right. They've always been, you know, the ones who stood behind. We know. You look at York. You look at all the pedal licences now around Morton and places like that, and you know, everywhere around Kirby Misfit is everywhere but INEOS, and you know, pretty much everyone in the country who follows it fucking knows that once Third Energy get the job done, it'll be pass it over, and what Barclays will say, we'll get shut of that. We'll get shut of it in Panama. We'll do the deal in Panama, so we don't need it out the way. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's early days. It's early days with it. You know, did we expect to get it through all today? Not really, to be fair. You know, we've been in front of this judge twice, and he made the initial judgment, so he's always had his way with it. You know, that's, you know, everyone is individual,
Yeah.
and everyone sees things in a different way.
But now we need people to actually take an interest in it, particularly if they're in an INEOS licensed area, which is 1.2 million acres across the north of England. We need people to take an interest, and as you know, Joe was advocating for people to contact their MP, you know, contact their local council, their county council, and just make sure that there is opposition to INEOS at every step of the way. And actually, some of the content of Tom Pickering's witness statement actually shows why they need to oppose it. Because it states categorically that the chemicals that they're using in the process are extremely toxic.
Well, I think there's going to be there was an application to the judge from a journalist, so that journalist will no doubt receive that information sometime today. So I would expect there'll be an article on that sometime next 24, 48 hours, and that's vital because you know, you've got factory knots right now going through the process of council meeting on Thursday.
Exactly.
Thursday this week or next week? This week. I think today is Thursday. Anyway, it's coming up.
Soon.
So I mean, it's something like that they need to go and take to the council and say, look, this is what's what. Because you know, we haven't seen that in any information from anywhere in all the years I've been following this industry and this, and all of a sudden there it is, and the people are being misled, as they say. But what you'll say, but the thing is, what you'll have is you'll have the pro-frackers saying we're scaremongering, but
Hey.
who's scaremongering? Who's
scaremongering?
Straight from the horse's mouth, come from the same mouth, CEO there. So who's scaremongering now? It's pro-frackers. Always is. Always been.
Joe, I got to head back to the front line.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything you've been doing here.
Welcome.
Outstanding, my friend.
Yeah.
And well, we'll be back for the appeal.
We'll be back for the appeal. Yeah.
Thanks. And I will catch you back at Kirby Liston tomorrow morning at 8:30. And hey, let's see if Greg Clark decides to take today anything from this ruling today. Frankly, I don't think there was anything to take. And it all comes down really to the information that was already on his desk. So let's wait and see what happens. And back tomorrow, back to, I think it's going to be a rather chilly North Yorkshire.